design through engineering and architecture. So a lot of this course run is kind of summarizing a lot of what I've spent my entire college career trying to learn in the first place. Similar to Prajat, my first exposure to design thinking and entrepreneurship and human-centered design happened abroad. I also did European Innovation Academy, but the first time it was hosted at Cal. So I participated in Estonia, and I worked with a team of 4 Estonians to create a finance app. So one of the people on my team was working in finance at the time and realized that there's a really big inefficiency in terms of annual general meetings, in that every year a company is supposed to hold a meeting where all of their shareholders come visit their company and they get to talk about what they want to see in the company, the direction, where the money is going. But the problem is, now more and more people are starting to invest in companies abroad. So if I'm based here, I'm not going to fly 15 hours to go to a company in Germany, which means my voice isn't going to be heard. So the biggest design challenge in this case was, for me, a then 19-year-old from California, to understand what it felt like to be a CEO, a CFO, a shareholder of one of these large companies. So I kind of got a crash course in how do you even understand that kind of problem? How do you use a research? How do you convince a CEO of a publicly traded company to have a 15-minute conversation with you over coffee? So that was kind of my first exposure to it. I also learned Illustrator for the first time, delved into graphic design, and realized this is something I was really wanted to get more involved in. Also similar to Prajat, I started getting involved in different organizations on campus. I started getting involved with Berkeley Innovation, a human-centered design club on campus, and Design Engineering Collaborative, both of which taught me a lot about understanding the user, creating solutions that really fit their needs, and in general, just working on interesting ways of solving problems. One of the first classes that I took that really applied this design thinking knowledge to physical products was Design Build, Pilot Jacobs class. So in this class, we focused on creating a laptop stand and kind of got exposed to a lot of digital prototyping materials and processes. So this is one of my initial sketches for this prompt, and I wanted to understand how could I make something that I would actually use. So I realized I really enjoy using my laptop mostly in my bed, on a table sometimes, next to food. At the time I was taking a CS class by Carlos Sequin about symmetry and topology. So I was really interested in Klein bottles. I thought math art was really cool. So I wanted to take all of this inspiration and create something tangible from it. So from there, I started designing and started making things physically. I started off knowing I wanted a kind of organic curvy shape, so I worked with paper to first understand that medium. Then I kind of moved on to cardboard and started figuring out what do those joints look like? How do you make this thing out of multiple pieces that stays together when you use it? How exactly would it sit on my lap while I'm sitting in bed? And through all of these iterations, I was able to make a final product made from plywood that was CNC milled, and it's actually still something I use every single day. And this class was one of my first experiences in really taking that design thinking experience and applying it to something more tangible and physical. I took IOR 190 again as a junior, and in this time we focused a lot more on making mobile apps. So we created an app called Ditto, which basically makes the process of answering emails on mobile a lot easier. Like, we realize, especially if you're working in, you're a recruiting student, or you're a salesperson or a marketer, you say a lot of the same things over and over and over again. And while it's easy to type these things up on a computer, it's a lot more difficult to do that when you're on the bus ride, or when you're taking an Uber home, or when you're just out at the park or something. And sometimes it's really important to get to those emails. So we created a app which would allow you to save your most commonly used phrases and use them whenever, create a keyboard that would allow you to access them whenever you need to. The next project that I'm going to talk about is from critical making, which you guys have also heard about. It's one of my favorite classes at Cal. And this particular project was also on movement. So we had to create something that would increase someone's mobility. So my team wanted to focus on a problem that we personally didn't understand. We really wanted to develop that empathy. So we created a necklace and glove combination that helps the blind with obstacle detection or obstacle avoidance and navigation using haptic feedback. So basically this necklace would be worn around someone's neck and it would vibrate whenever someone's about to walk into an obstacle. The glove would allow someone to push a button and using text, speech to text, they would be able to say where they wanted to go. And they would point in a direction and be able to feel a vibration when they're facing the right way. This was also a really difficult challenge to understand and be able to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Like how do you design for an experience I've never lived? I really, really enjoyed it. I feel like that class was a really wonderful way of being exposed to different kinds of design and being able to be really creative and maybe not create something useful, but something interesting. Going back to the architecture side, I felt like design at Berkeley has been expressed in so many different ways. I've kind of encountered it through entrepreneurship, through physical product design, and also through a lot of courses in architecture. So this was the start of a class I took in architecture, Architecture 200A, where we had to, inspired from bending polyester used to make couches, to design a house inspired from that. So from this thing, I was able to come up with a series, that's really bad quality, a series of plans and sections, and eventually final renderings. And I thought experiencing and being able to go through design through architecture is a really interesting experience as opposed to a lot of engineering focuses. Engineering tends to focus a lot more on functionality and will it work? Is it tangible? If it drops, will it break? Whereas I feel like architecture approaches design from a completely different perspective. A lot of the questions my professors would ask is like, how does that conceptually connect to the other side? Do your plans and sections, like, does that line connect? Like, it's a lot more focused on aesthetics or core concepts. So it was interesting seeing an environment where everyone creates space in such a different way, where it's not just what are you trying to achieve, but how do you plan on achieving it? How did you go about placing that window or placing that door? And how does that affect the environment that creates? And that's basically all I have.
Do we have any questions for Julia? Yeah, we've none of questions from her. Even center design comment. That is what I'm
So I went to a talk like a few weeks ago, but they basically kind of just said the same thing that you said in the last part, how like engineering is like approaching it things from like a very functional point of view, and art is like kind of more for the beauty, and then the design is like combining the two of those. So like when you said that like just immediately clicked with like kind of mind with that.
I'm currently taking LS25, which is like design to the arts. And we're right now, like the past like 2 months, been focusing on architecture. So I've looked at the architecture in so many different spheres all together. It's like an aesthetic in itself, but it is like a engineering practice too, in effect too. So it's interesting seeing your approach on how you create things, because like the architecture world is very, very broad, and you kind of do anything with it.
Exactly. Yeah, actually going off of that, I'm taking a construction class right now. So we like are pouring concrete, going to construction sites, and like literally finding out what is in the walls. And it's really fascinating to kind of see that perspective, like this line that takes me 5 seconds to draw in Rhino or Illustrator, like, is like 50 pieces of wood and like filled with like all of like it's full of insulation and like different layers, and it's interesting to see that disconnect in both really tangible like lived space that we don't experience but has to exist in order for rain to not get in, but also like for the new like BAM PFA, like slanted brick roofs, and like, that's all a different experience in how we approach and kind of view that space.